What's up, everybody? Alec here, back with you on Thursday afternoon. Got another video for Trinity Road Times premium subscribers. This one's actually going to be free for the masses, so check it out if you're not a subscriber. But you like the kind of work we're doing here, you like the stuff you see here, check out Trinity Road Times Premium. Get access to all these videos, do about one a week, and talking football scheme, basketball scheme, player fit, all that stuff, and do a lot more of that stuff in the Trinity Road Times premium chat as well. So you'll get access to both those things for just $3 a month, and you can get a free trial to start. So check it out. On to the actual video. So I ran a poll this week in our private chat and on Twitter. What people wanted to see most. I did not include any men's basketball options because kind of men's basketball out right now after all the stuff that's been going on with that. So I want to talk a little football. And we had a dead heat between Kurt Roper's offense and DJ Elliott's defense. So we're actually going to do both. We're going to start here with Kurt Roper's offense. This will be the free video that we're going to do this week. And Kurt Roper has not been an offense coordinator since 2017, I believe. So there's not a whole lot of sense in trying to go back there and dissect like what he did back then. But what I want to look at is what he can do this year, and what State is set up to do from a personnel perspective. So philosophically, the thing that we all want to see from Kurt Roper is an offense that takes the things that the players are good at, right? That the team is good at, and lays that down as a foundation, and then builds out from there, right? And that's kind of what State did not do last year. So that's like what those things are, what State is going to be good at. You don't necessarily know exactly who may have taken what step in the spring and in fall camp, but we do kind of have a feel for what they were good at last year, what certain players can do really well versus not as well. So we're going to take a look at a couple different things I think State could do this year that could lead to a lot of success. Now, one of the biggest things that's going to be different about this team, I believe, is that they're going to have better add-on run blocking. So last year, the offensive line in the run game was pretty darn good. State did not really have additional run blockers. Uh, Tight end play was iffy most of the year, and it handicapped the run game a little bit from a variety perspective, right? So State could run its base concepts really well. It could backside block with the tight end well enough, but it couldn't run counter. It couldn't run power. It couldn't run anything that involved a pulling tight end. So the solution to that is something that they did with Brandon Armstrong the year before. Really, they ran a lot of Q counter with GT pull, right? GT counter, guard tackle pulling, and out of no tight ends, right? 10 personnel, and that requires a read option, right, on that unblocked end on that play. TJ Bailey could not do that. So it kind of eliminated a lot of this stuff for them. And they had to be a zone heavy team, and they were really, really good at it. They didn't run it enough. They still tried to jam these plays in there for some reason, and I don't know why. But this year, with Cody Hardy from Elon, and if you're not a believer just because the name Elon is in there, and it's not a big football factory, change your viewpoint on this because I'm a huge believer in this guy. I think he's going to be a really, really good player for State. He changes a lot of what State can do in the run game. So with Dalen Smothers, right, a very, very good running back, I want to see State run a lot of zone. Right, that's kind of your base concept, I think, and that's true for like 80% of college football teams. State's good at it; they are good at it. So you're going to have Jacarius Peak on the left side where Anthony Belton is now, and Anthony Carter right here, and then still kind of waiting to be seen who will play center. Where Zeke Correll is right here. Jalen Grant probably your guy, but we're going to want to see a lot of zone left. So let's look at a basic outside zone play to the left here before we talk about split flow. So you're going to have Belton blocking this guy. You're going to have Carter probably double teaming to this back. You're going to have a reach here from Correll. You're going to have McKay on the double. That double is going to go to the Mike. And then you're probably going to get a scoop block here from Carries Peak. And then it's just a scoop blocker protection from your tight end there. So that's kind of how a basic outside zone play would set up. Now, State's really, really good at this. They will run this a lot this year. They need to run this a lot this year. They might not be quite as good at it without Zeke Correll and Anthony Belton. But split flow is something that didn't run quite as much last year. It's not the hardest block in the world for a tight end, but it is something that can be really effective, and it can prevent the quarterback from having to make a read, which, as we said before, Bailey was not very good at. So if we look at that, we'll say let's run to the right here, and we're going to run outside zone, right? So that's not a good line there. We're going to have your reach block here. You're going to have a reach block here. Center is going to double this to this backer up here. You're going to have a reach here, another double team to this backer, or if there's a guy out here, you might double that way, whatever. And the tight end here is actually going to come pull across the formation and just try and destroy this guy right here. And so that creates a cutback lane and protects against this guy who's going to be unblocked by the offensive line, right? So usually that would be a read option. So you don't block that guy, you read him, quarterback pulls if he crashes on the ball. That's the kind of thing that CJ Bailey could not do last year. He was really bad at it. Probably just the freshman experience, right? That's pretty normal. But these types of split zone plays, when you get Cody Hardy in there doing that, he's good at it, right? He's a really strong run blocker, and he's a good. He can run too, so he'll be able to do stuff like this, and it creates that additional cutback lane right here, right? So if you're running zone like that, cutback lane's not usually going to be there that far back against this guy because he's going to be unblocked. So he's going to be, ideally, in an ideal world, if you're the defense, surfing off the side of Belton as Belton blocks this way. So basically protect that edge, prevent that cutback, don't let the quarterback pull the ball out. So kind of hang out in this area essentially. Right? With the split flow, you can open that hole up if that ball needs to cut back all the way over there. And Dalen Smothers is very good, right? He's good enough to make all these reads. And that's what you want, right? So that's definitely something that I think they should do a lot of this year. And the other thing this opens up is counterplays, right? Which is a surging run in football from a popularity standpoint. It's a response to a lot of the three down fronts that became popular over the last however many years. If you're an NC State fan, it is nightmare fuel from last year. But this is something State can do this year, I think, because it has Cody Hardy. And Cody Hardy's a good lead blocker and a good kick player. So he can do a number of different things for you in a gap scheme run play. So counter would look like this, right? You'd have two pullers. First would be here. This would be your guard. He's going to pull to this guy and kick this guy out. So that's your kick out block. You want him to go that way. And then your tight end here, and this is going to be Cody Hardy, is your wrapper, right? Your lead blocker to this guy, basically. Or just whatever color is there, right? Whatever the first non-red jersey is theirs is what his block is. That's what they couldn't really do a lot of last year for the reasons that what we just talked about. But it can do this year, I think. And Smothers can certainly run this stuff, no problem. So you've got all of that now in play. You can have a little bit more of a diverse run game. I don't think it should be that diverse. I think it should be this and zone pretty much. And then you can tinker with that based on what's on film and all that stuff. But these are things that State can do to create a little bit more of a diverse run game. And then there are benefits to being a team that can run gap scheme in the passing game also. And this is something that State was lacking that I think it can do this year to help build a more effective play action game. So when you're running a zone play, right, the run fits for the backers are, just in the most basic sense, they would be here, right? No games from the defensive line. This is what you would expect, just in the most basic way possible. Now, if you're going to run gap scheme plays, right, where you're going to create two additional gaps over here, the linebackers and the box players have to flow with that, right? They have to get over here. So you're going to see a lot of flow from these guys to that play. Now, what that does is it makes it a little bit easier to trigger the linebackers, right? I don't remember who said this. It was a quote that I heard from Alex G at Inside Pack Sports, but I don't remember who originally said it. But if you want to run play action, pull a guard, right? Because that triggers the linebackers, right? So a lot of teams key the guards on the snap. So you're reading pass set, you're reading run blocking, or you're reading pull, right? And if you can get them to trigger this way on the pull, you can run a glance route or a little slant type route right in here and have a ton of space right there, right? It's a more effective way to run an RPO. And this is something Nick Saban has talked about if you want to go back and listen to him talk about it, because he does know a little bit more about football than I do. But this conceptually opens up a little bit more type of play action stuff, RPO stuff, things like that. Now, Bailey was not very good with the RPO last year, the basic glance RPO. He was a little bit better with what you call a gift RPO or a bail RPO. That's a totally different thing, though. He was not great with this, but he's a sophomore now, so I kind of expect that he'll be able to execute this kind of thing. I don't think it's that difficult of a read. So this is something that all of this slightly more diverse run game that you can now look at can open this up for you, right? Different types of ways to manipulate space at the second level. So that's good. That's exciting. And then, at least for the time being, we're going to jump to a different clip over here. This is from the Clemson game. I want to see State sprinkle in simpler passing plays for CJ Bailey. That's something that I definitely want to see from them. And he was pretty good at reading these single side high-low plays last season. So I'll show you what that is if you don't know. But so, for example, Clemson is going to play cover 3 here, right? So this guy's bailing, this guy's going to bail, this guy's going to bail, deep thirds. And then you're going to have 4 underneath. So you're going to have flat defender, hook defender. This guy is very targetable in a lot of ways. In a true spot drop zone, cover 3 like that. There's a lot of plays that are designed, a lot of passing concepts that are designed to read off of that player. And it's something that CJ Bailey was pretty good at. Not great at it, but his first time he stepped on the field against Louisiana Tech, you could see that he was more comfortable doing that than he was a lot of the other things that he was asked to do. He had some instances where you go back and you watch this kind of thing, like a smash concept is what we'll look at here, like a sail concept, and it's like, it was bad. But he was better at this. He seems comfortable doing this. I think this is something that you can do a lot of, and State didn't do a lot. So an easy example would be a sail concept, which is actually what they're going to run here, or you might call it a flood concept, depending on what you do with the backside. But this is basically the concept. It's pretty darn simple. Everybody runs it. It's just a frequency thing. How much do you run it? But the idea is basically take this corner right here, make him go away. So I'll clear that out so you don't clog up the screen too much. And then these routes here, this space is covered by this guy, right? And then you're reading off the movement of that player. So that's what you're going to see on this play if we play through it, is that type of concept. So that's sail, right? You can run other stuff that sets up this kind of approach also, right? So you could run a smash concept, for example, which is the same kind of thing, right? You're reading off of the guy it's you're high-loading the flat defenders is the terminology there. This is the kind of thing I think Bailey was good at, and it's simpler, right? So what I didn't like with CJ Bailey last year was when they would give him 4 verticals, right? And so you gotta play there where all 4 routes are in play. It's a full field read. There's a check down also, so technically there's 5 players that can get the football. It wasn't what he was the best at. Now again, I'll repeat, I don't know what he's going to be the best at this year. That could obviously change. But he was pretty good at this, and I like that you can build this out of play action effectively, right? Because essentially what you're trying to do, what you're hoping for, the best result out of this play is for this guy to sit low. And then you can throw the ball over his head into this area. So State's actually going to do that on this play, and there's one other example I want to look at of them doing that. So if you run play action, right, and you can hold him a little bit lower, especially if he's in the run fit, right? And so that becomes part of what you can do now to open this space a little bit more. I think back to I watched a good bit of DJ Lagway at Florida, and they did a lot of stuff like this, and I liked it, right? You can use a solid run game to create these types of opportunities, and you can run a lot of stuff, right? So one of my favorites is Dagger, also, which is basically just sail in reverse. So your seam clear out is there, and then you're going to run this like that. And so basically you're clearing out that space and running it right here and running a guy through there. And then you could run like an out, you could release the back, you could have a guy over here and make it like a drive concept type thing to try and high-low that middle player. But it shrinks the progression a little bit, right? It shrinks how much you have to read as a quarterback. And I think that's helpful for a young quarterback. And it also allows you to add a tight end in protection and offer a little bit more. And if that's a guy who can run a route, right? And that's one thing about Cody Hardy is he can run a route. He didn't have a lot of receptions last year, but he wasn't like completely not a threat to catch the ball. He's not going to run like a go route in a Haas concept, like a seam streak or something like that. But you can run like a sit route with him. Like you can do stuff like that. You can add that tight end for protection, and that's also helpful to the quarterback. And then you can get into other stuff as well, like different versions of this that are designed to attack vertically a little bit more, right? So we're talking about throwing the ball underneath the safety with the clear out route. You can run a Yankee concept or a Mills concept or something like that that attacks the safety as the high low instead, right? So we'll say like this is a 3x1, but let's just create an example here. So you're gonna get like this dig or basic cross, whatever you want to call it, and then a post over the top. And then this guy is here, right? He's in the middle of that. That's the player that you're high-lowing, and if you're playing against a zone, this guy's going to have outside leverage almost every time, right? So he does not have good leverage to cover that post. So it can be a really effective concept. And again, it's a pretty simple read, right? It's a design shot play. So you protect with the tight end. So you're adding up a tight end to protection. You got a check and release from the back. So you got 7 guys in protection there. And it's really just like a simple read there for the quarterback. It's not 4 verticals or something that requires, I think, more chemistry and also just more processing ability from the quarterback on the regular. Like this is something that's a little bit simpler, and you can get to it using play action once again, right? You can suck this guy down with a little bit of play action. He's going to start coming down in run support and pick up this route, right? I mean, it looks like an RPO kind of, does it not? And then the post is over his head. That's the kind of stuff that I think is a little bit easier for someone like CJ Bailey to execute. And so philosophically, right, the whole thing sets up like that. It's a run game that utilizes not necessarily gap scheme concepts, but pulling players, right? You got the tight end pulling, right? You're pulling a guard, right, to trigger those linebackers. And you can run that stuff. If you can run that stuff, you can get into a lot of other stuff like this that is a little bit simpler for the quarterback, still stretches the field, is still difficult to cover. We'll take a look at this. This is actually good defense from Clemson here. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. You see, so Bailey's reading this guy right here, right? So they got a check in here for this kind of concept that drags 7 over here. They do a good job with it. But if this guy was not doing that, right, this would be completely wide open because this guy is sat all the way down here. And so that's the read, right? It's single side. It's something it's not dissimilar from what State did with Brennan Armstrong when their offense was really effective at the end of that season. We'll look at one more example here of this exact thing. And I like this kind of stuff because I think it's easy for the quarterback. So we'll take a look at this. You'll see a good example here of the flat defender sitting low, and there's just a ton of space. Right? So you've got this guy here, he was down, eyes on the back, and there's this much space, and Bailey's just reading him. Right, so that's the kind of thing that I think you can do really effectively with this quarterback. And then, you can run other stuff off of this too, right? You start building concepts off of these types of things, right? You show them something, right? They start to make adjustments to defend that, and then you make counter adjustments. And you get into things like sting routes and double moves, right? So you run, let's just back this up real quick. This would be long developing, but it's just an example. Maybe you run a flag route like you would in sail, and then you cut it up. Right? That'd be a long developing play, but you get into stuff like that. In big letters, what you want to see is a base, and then building out from that base. Right? Understand what you're good at, do it, and go from there. And those are just some of the concepts that I think State can use this year to be really effective that are on the table. The other one I wanted to mention is 12 personnel, right? So two tight ends. So we'll bump back over to this Tennessee lineup here. The other one I wanted to mention is 12 personnel, right? So if you had Justin Jolie right here, you'd be in two attached tight ends, you'd be on like a jumbo set. But what you can do with two tight ends that can both feasibly run routes, and again, Hardy's not a guy that's gonna run a seam go route, but you can do some things with him. Is you can run a lot of stuff from the same look, right? So you run that run counter like we were talking about before, and you take your front side tight end if you're in 12 personnel, and you arc for one of these backers or box players that's going to fit, you can create a lot of problems, right? And this is not something that Justin Jolie was very good at last year because that's just not the kind of player that he is. But with two tight ends now that you feel comfortable with on the field, maybe you can do something like this. It can create a lot of nightmares for these three down front teams that you will definitely see this year. That NC State was last year. Now, obviously, Tennessee here is not in that front, but it's just an example of some of the ways that you could possibly use 12 personnel, right? If you have Justin Jolie here, you can come out in a jumbo set and run 4 verticals if you want, right? 2 verticals on the outside, Jolie vertical there. The back is in a sidecar position. He runs a vertical here, and then your other side tight end just becomes your check down, right? And you can do something like that even, right? And then you get like a little bit of like, you could switch release it maybe if you want to do something like a post wheel concept, that type of stuff. You can do all of that in addition to counter, right? All out of the same look. And it creates certain ambiguity for the defense. So I do think State has a chance to be more versatile this year. And these are some of the ways that I think they can do that without overextending what we know as of now what they'll have personnel wise. We'll have to see how that turns out. Maybe CJ Bailey is several steps ahead this year, and you can do almost anything you want, right? We'll have to see, but this is certainly a good starting spot in my opinion. Just it's reductive, right, at a basic level, but the kind of thing that I think you can do with what should be a decent enough run game and an ability to run more gap scheme concepts this year. So that's going to do it for us today. If you enjoyed this video, you're interested in learning and talking more about state football, state men's basketball, state women's basketball, be sure to check out Trinity Road Times Premium. We got about one video a week like this, and then a premium Discord server, a chat for all of our subscribers as well, where we cover film of all the new basketball editions and football editions, as well as do some game recap stuff while we put together the larger public game recaps. So just it's a very active group of NC State fans. If you are interested in that, hit membership and start your 7-day free trial, and we hope to see you there.